Need my glasses. Not bad. Not bad.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the next series of the Golf Chat Show Live. We've got Andrew on again, and today we're talking all things Seve. It was his birthday on Thursday, and all things Masters, because as we're sitting here now, it should be Masters Sunday. Now, Drew, you just said you actually just watched it on the BBC, and I want to start off with a pretty big statement here. Do you think more people would pick up golf if it was shown, and I'm seeing them just meaning like the majors, on terrestrial TV?
I don't think there's any question about that. I'll have to correct you there, though, because I've just watched it on Sky.
Oh, my God. Drew, you meant to...
No, yeah, I know it is being shown on BBC today, tonight, which is fantastic. And listen, I don't know what the numbers were for viewing figures for last year when Woods won for the first time in whatever it was, 10 years or so. They must have been fairly big, but there would be nothing like, not even close contest with how big they'd be on terrestrial television. So, you know, if they got I don't know what they are, by the way, so don't quote me on this, but if they got 1 million on Sky, they'd get 5 million on BBC, I would have thought. Now, a bit of a pluck in the air that with numbers, but I just think that, you know, people pick up, like they do Wimbledon, they pick up golf on the television. That gets the casual viewer. It doesn't necessarily get the golf viewer, is what. Yeah.
It's like the Wimbledon effect. You touched on it there. Like, I know I'm one of them people. You see Wimbledon, and I'm finding the local tennis court, even if it's like tarmac tennis court with glass around it, and they're hitting a few tennis balls on it.
Anyway, excuse me, I'm just going to have a cup of tea. Is that all right?
Here we go. Are you sitting on your chair anyway?
No, you know what? The chair's a bit low, but I've got my Masters mug. I've worn Masters yellow. Yeah, it's the nearest I've got.
I was trying to find green, and I've got no green, so I've gone on your recommendation to not wear black and actually wear a bit of colour.
Good.
So hopefully my outfit's all right tonight, Drew.
Nice to know you made the effort. Yeah.
Okay, so it was Seve's birthday on Thursday. We spoke after the show last week and just talked about some of the stories that you had. And we both said, well, we've got to share these stories because some of them all of them are amazing, in fact. So it's Seve's birthday Thursday, Masters Sunday. Start off with a story for us.
Well, for a start, tomorrow, the 13th of April, it's 40 years to the day that Seve actually won his first Masters. He won 2. He won in 1980. He was the first European to win the Masters and the youngest winner at that time to win the Masters as well. So, you know, phenomenal impact that Seve had at Augusta. So, you know, I should have worn navy blue really, because Seve generally wore navy blue in the final round, although he didn't in the Masters. I don't think. I think he wore pale blue one day. Anyway, whatever. I think, listen, Seve is a golfing god. He was a massive inspiration to me. I played on tour for almost 20 years, and he inspired not just me, but all the players around me at that time for that long. So he was phenomenal inspiration and impact on European golf. I don't think you can't question that. The impact he had on the Ryder Cup, the impact he had on the European Tour, and you know, the popularity of the European Tour was led very much by Seve, and obviously by that golden generation of Faldo, Langer, Olatharbel, Lyle, Woosnam. You know, there was some fantastic players all emerging at the same time, and I was very much in the shadows of those guys. So it was a privilege.
Now, the two things that I think of, and Seve was a little bit before my time, which I'm absolutely gutted. I mean, I can only watch how good he was on the reruns that we can see on TV this week. But the two images that I've got in my head is at Cron, where he's apparently hit it over a swimming pool, through a hole about this big, short of the green, chipped in, because I think it was before the pond was there, and then where he's punching the air and dancing sort of on the last at the Open. They're the two memories that I have from TV.
Yeah, I mean, the one at Cron is much more, I suppose, because it's Cron and because it wasn't on terrestrial television, then it's not seen by that many people unless you're an absolute golf geek. The Open when he won, he won his first Open, obviously, at Lytham, didn't he? When he chipped it, a phenomenal chip from the side of the green to within 3 or 4 inches. How it didn't go in, I don't know. and that was Seve to a T. Majestic touch, short game, nerve. He was phenomenal. But the one at the Open was iconic because it was where it was. It was at St Andrews, the home of golf, and he just made 4 at the 17th. Watson was coming down the stretch with him and made 5, hit it against the wall at the 17th, and Seve held it from 15 feet or thereabouts on the 18th. It just turned in right to left down the slope, and then he just stood there and gave it the massive clench of his fist. And that was on the front page of every newspaper the following day, probably all over the world. It was such was his impact. He was. There's not many people, I would say, that have transcended the sport a bit like Pele did with football. Seve was Pele of golf. He was and known by his one name worldwide, even now.
Was it all about his golf, from your opinion, or was it about his personality as well? Was it the person?
I think it was the person. I think the way he played the game was such a swashbuckling, almost a bit. He was our version of Arnold Palmer, I suppose, going back in the day. Arnold Palmer was very much a swashbuckling player, gave it a big rip, found it, gave it another big rip, hold it from off the green, made some ridiculous shots. I mean, I've seen and played alongside Seve a few times, and I've seen at pretty close quarters some of the majestic shots he hit under the cosh as well. It's not as if he was doing it, just larking around. He was those shots under the intense pressure. And some of this week has been a rerun on TV by Sky for quite a number of the previous winners over the Masters. And Seve, some of the shots Seve hit to win the Masters in 80 and 83 were just out of this world. He was, hitting it round trees, off down slopes, up and over, and like he does. That's the way he played. He played from the heart. That's what Seve did.
So with you playing with him, obviously everybody talks about him being almost like swashbuckling, saving things, chipping in from everywhere. That's it, Drew. You have another sip of the mug there. Get it in the show.
Yeah, sorry.
But I mean, you can't be that good and not have an element of the game where it's like, wow, like, was his iron play good? Was his
he was he was wow. He
win
75 tournaments around the world.
Yeah, exactly.
A fantastic player. And without being a fantastic driver of the ball. Everyone says, he's a car park player and he hits it wild. You don't win round Wentworth and you don't win round Augusta by hitting it wild off the tee.
No.
Care who you are. When he won at Augusta the first time, he absolutely nailed it down the 17th and he nailed it down the 18th. Those pretty narrow tee shots. I mean, they weren't as narrow 30 years ago as they are now, but even so, he was a fantastic player. Won round Woburn. Woburn's probably one of the tightest golf courses in the country, and was one of his favourite courses. And it's as tree lined as anything. It's fantastic golf course. So you don't win all over where he won without being fantastic. He could hit it wild because he was so committed, I suppose.
Yeah.
And he did hit it a bit wayward sometimes, but he didn't half stripe it as well. He was a striper. He was a flusher. He rarely mishit a shot. If he hit it off the fairway, it was off the middle of the club, going a bit left or going a bit right.
Did he manoeuvre the ball quite a lot, right to left to right, every shot? And
yeah, he was a bit of a high drawer of the ball, really, which is why Augusta fitted his eye so magnificently well, mostly. But he could pretty well do everything with the ball. He was a magician. He was alongside Lee Trevino in terms of shot making skills, and those are skills that I know I'm old school, and I know new schools bombing at school. It's Brooks Koepka, Rory McIlroy school, but those guys still maneuver the ball a little bit as well. They're bombers, but they don't half have control over the flight of the ball, whether it's a little bit left to right or a little bit right to left. Whereas in those days, going back, there was wooden-headed clubs for a start. With the woods, obviously, and the ball was soft, so it would spin right and left and balloon up in the air and get caught on the wind, much more so than the modern ball. So it was a completely different game played by a different era of golfers. We know all that, but the skill that Seve and Lee Trevino and all those guys had was pure. He was a magician.
How do you think he would fare now, though, with modern equipment, modern golf ball, modern driver? Could he maneuver the ball just as much? Was he just that talented? Would he be just as good as he is now?
Yeah, he'd just bomb it. He the one thing Seve had, Seve was Seve's green skills were legendary. He was the Phil Mickelson of 30 years, 40 years ago. Such was his confidence with the short shots around the greens, his visualization. He played them low and runny. He played them left to right. He played them right to left. He played them with loft. He played them with no loft. And the one thing that Seve always said to me when I've practiced with him literally half a dozen times, probably at most. I remember once in Cron at Cron-sur-Sierre, funnily enough, in Switzerland, Swiss Open, and he was God. He was golfing God, and for him to come alongside myself and Pete Barber and Paul Carrigill and hit some pitch shots on the little chipping green as was then by the hotel near the first tee, and he used to say that 56 degrees was a sand wedge in those days, and there was no wedge systems as such. And then Ping, I think it was one of the first people to create what they called the L wedge, the lob wedge that we know now. And he thought that was a travesty. He thought that was a negator of skill. So he would have banned those as quick as anything. Never mind 64 degrees.
I need them.
And 60 degrees. Anything more than 56, he said, you should be able to do everything you want with 56. And Watson did. Tom Watson, I've managed to play with as well. 56 degrees of loft was his most lofted wedge until very, very recently. Those guys are from a different league.
Yeah, totally. Okay, Drew. So you said a story the other day, and you told me a story, and you got a few books here. I want you to show us the first book and share with us your first story.
Okay. I hope this is not going to be too boring, is it? Anyway.
No, not at all. I certainly find it interesting. So I know a lot of the guys here will.
So, 1987 Scottish Open was the first year that, from the previous year, we'd got the European Tour yearbook, and I've got it here right in front of me. So in 1988, sorry, no, I'm wrong there. I've got my years wrong. 1988. Anyway, long story short, we get this European Tour yearbook, which is that, and Seve, being number one, was on the front cover. And as a player, we got issued with one at the Scottish Open at Glen Eagles. My son, who'd just been born 6-7 months previously, was in a pushchair alongside the putting green, and I'd collected my book from the European Tour office, and it was on Ben's lap. And Seve walked on the putting green, and I said, Seve, would you mind doing me a favour? I thought that's an opportune moment. Get Seve to sign the book. I said, this is Ben. He gave Ben a rub on the hair, as he was fantastic with kids, by the way. And he said, hi, Ben. And he kneeled down and he scribbled in this book, which is here. The first book I went to seek when Seve died, in fact. And he scribbled in Spanish. I said, what have you said? He said, I can't tell you. I'm not telling you. For sure was I'd asked him to tell me what he'd written, and he said he wouldn't. Then Olazabal said, just smiled, and he wouldn't tell me what he'd written either. And I think it was somebody like Miguel Angel Jimenez came on shortly afterwards, and he said, he just smiled and laughed. He said, typical Seve. He said, he's written to Dear Ben, I hope you're a better player than your father.
I mean, that's a great sense of humour to me.
Yeah, he was a top man. Seve was an absolute top man.
So just kind of put into perspective, like in those days when you're on the putting green, was it very similar to it is now? All the guys are practicing at the same time. It's like quite an enclosed area, or could the public almost just like walk on as well? Or
they was still roped off, but the putting green actually at Glen Eagles at that time still there. In fact, pretty well near the first tee at the King's Course. It's quite a small putting green, so it wasn't a big big putting green at all. There was literally half a dozen people on it, and it was full. So it was great to be in their shadow, very much in their shadows. No question. I'm not ashamed to say that. I'm privileged to have played amongst those guys. And I didn't play with him until 1988. In fact, that was that year that he'd signed that book, and it was at the French Open. And I don't know whether I shared this with you last time, but anyway, long story short, I'm playing with him in about 4 or 5 shots behind Nick Faldo in the French Open, and it's the first time I get drawn to play with him. And he said, I walk onto the putting green, I see him in the morning, and I phoned my father in the night before from a coin box. That's how long ago it was, and said, Dad, I'm playing with Seve tomorrow. He said, oh, great, son. He said, go on, just go and enjoy it. Just that's what you practice for. Just go and enjoy it. And I thought, Dad, you don't know what it's going to be like. Long story short, I walk on the putting green, Seve's there, and I said, morning, Seve. He said, morning, Andrew. I said, Seve, when you saw the draw last night, I bet you didn't sleep, did you? He said, actually, Andrew, he said, I sleep very well. How about you?
How did you sleep, by the way?
Not very well. Anyway, long story short, last year might have even been the year. No, last year it was. A very dear friend of mine, Paul Carrigill's father passed away, and Paul was clearing some of his golf memorabilia out and came across this magazine from the 1988 French Open. And in the inside cover of this French magazine was a picture of Seve teeing it off the first with a very youthful me. Stood very sheepishly leaning on my driver, which I didn't know that I'd never seen the photograph. Why would I? It was in a French magazine. And anyway, I had this picture. I got this picture and I had it mounted. I had a small version of it made so I could at least fit it somewhere. It wasn't going to be so intrusive in the house. And I've actually got it if you'd like to see it, which is
definitely.
Seve in navy blue, as he always tended to wear on the last day. That's it about there. I don't know whether you can see it that way.
Yeah.
Seve on the left-hand, on the right-hand side of the picture, obviously, in red trousers. Me rather sheepishly leaning on my driver. 10 past midday.
How did you play that day then? How was it? Was it?
Well, funnily enough, when I got that book out the other day to share with you tonight, I had a look at what score I did. And I knew I'd tied with Seve because I thought 71 and he'd shot 72. Actually, I shot 73 and he shot 72. And we finished up tied 14th or 11th or something. So nowhere near threatening Nick Faldo's lead. And he apologised at the end of it. He played poorly. I played actually okay, which was not bad for me to finish 15th and 11th or whatever it was in a tournament. He was obviously disappointed. He'd won 4 or 5 French Opens before. And I'd said to him, thanks for the game, Seve. I said, I'm sorry I didn't inspire you to greater things. And I thought that was quite deep for me. And he said, actually, Andrew said, I'm sorry I play so badly. He put his arm around me as we walked off the 18th green. I'm sorry I play so bad. He said, next time we play, he said, I promise I play better. Which is pretty cool, isn't it? I can't imagine some of the guys saying that.
No, I mean, just kind of speculate. To put the level of superstar that he was is like obviously world number one, literally the icon of golf at the time. Like you can imagine now, I'm just speculating, the fact that some of these icons of golf now potentially aren't as humble as he was.
And maybe humble beginnings and all that stuff. I'm sure, I don't know Rory McIlroy, I've been in his company a couple of times, and he is the most delightful fella. I'm sure McIlroy has got that very humble family background. I'm sure most of them have, really. They just hide behind the visors and the sunglasses, don't they, a little bit?
Yeah.
And we don't get quite as close to them as perhaps I can imagine John Rahm, for instance, from the Spanish upbringing that he had. Very different upbringing to Seve's, but I can imagine he's a bit of a family man, and wears his heart on his sleeve, and he plays golf that way, doesn't he? He's not a robot.
No, and I was going to come on to that really, because you look at all the Spanish, and when I caddied for your son Tom, you notice all the Spanish play very similar, like quite aggressive, quite vocal, quite kind of like swashbuckling, great short game. Everybody's like, oh, he's got Seve hands, inspired. Yeah, Spanish hands. Why is that? I think because he was such a big person, not only for us as golfers, but a Spanish idol. Has that inspired everybody, and is that the case?
Yeah, I think so. I think they've all come back. They've all come through the ranks as caddies as well.
Yeah,
I think you can go through all the guys. Maybe not the current crop. John Rahm, I've just mentioned, is the modern crop because he went to American college and Whereas the previous tranche of players, the Manuel Pinero, Garrido, they didn't come from wealthy families particularly. So they started like Seve caddying at the local club, and they made do with what they had. They made do with borrowing a club out of somebody's bag from the bag room, and fiddling and faffing around with a 3-iron or a 5-iron or whatever it was. And so they developed those skills, I think, at a very young age. They're not coached. Nobody could coach Manuel Pinheiro how to chip a ball from here to there. He taught himself, and he was a massive inspiration to Seve. Seve really looked up to Manuel Pinheiro. He was a great father figure for Manuel for Seve Manuel, because he travelled before Seve. He was a majestic player.
I think it's also to do like the style of golf courses, like the grasses, how it all is in Spain compared to the UK, just on that kind of comparison.
I just think that I don't think it's that. Maybe the fast greens. Yeah. Funny sort of grass sometimes, isn't it? Over there, you get that Kikuyu sometimes, and you get the Bermuda rough, and you've got to have soft, floppy hands, and you've got to manufacture it. I think it's just a matter of they learn how to play golf. They don't get taught how to play golf. And I think there's a massive, massive difference there, where people, kids can learn to play in the back garden. You see all these chipping challenges now that are going on in people's back garden, because that's where they've locked down to. People are probably doing more things now than they've ever done with a wedge and a 7-iron in the back garden, just to keep themselves occupied. So I definitely think it's from a background. Golf in those days was very elite on the continent of Europe, Germany and Switzerland, and especially in Portugal and Spain. It was very elitist. So there was no kids that came to have lessons off the pro. They're all the kids were the caddies.
Yeah. So I mean, I think of the UK now and people playing golf, and I guess you could say golf in the UK is still sort of like elitist as such. It's a little bit more affordable, but unless you come from a not a well-to-do background, but a good background, you're probably not going to pick up golf. And there's not the opportunity to caddy now, is there, really, in the UK, like there was back then?
No, not like there is in Spain, and there isn't in Spain really anymore either.
No.
It's a changing world, isn't it? Everyone's in buggies now, because buggies are a revenue generator for all the courses these days. So I think that it's a different world. I don't think you're going to get and golf's not that elitist over here, really. Got a little bit of a perception of it.
Yeah.
Actually, if you go down to, I live in South Manchester, much like you do. There's lots of real salt of the earth golf clubs around here, and they're not expensive to play at.
No.
And they need people, to play on them, because they're all in a tough time.
Yeah, I totally agree.
So I think it comes from a little bit of school. Schools don't tend to board. Some of the pros around my area, for definite, don't. I've got a school that is 300 yards away. I was going to say a driver. It's probably a drive and a wedge for me. And it's got 2,000 kids there, but the local pro from near me doesn't go and do any teaching there, and doesn't get into those kids, 2,000 kids at that high school at Lim. So
even if 10% take it up, even if 1%,
not even 1%, 2%, yeah. So I think a lot of it comes from how driven the local pro is, down to get the local kids involved.
Yeah. Okay, next question, Andrew. This is one that I want to know. I'm actually asked this live from YouTube as well. What's your favourite Seve memory from when you were playing with him? So pick a shot from when you were playing with him. I know I put you on the spot here, and it's come from YouTube. That's why I couldn't prepare.
No, that's absolutely fine. It's absolutely fine. I think the last shot into the 18th green at Woburn, I played with Seve in the last game of the day, last 2 days, in fact, Saturday and Sunday. We happened to play them both on the Sunday because of a rain delay. And I think his last shot into the last green, which neither of us went on to win the championship. I finished 10th or something thereabouts. He finished second to Ian Woosnam. But his second shot with the 2-iron or 3-iron or something, raking shot, into the Woburn's 18th hole, which is actually Woburn's first hole now, but we played it as the 18th to get the grandstand around the green. I'd chopped it up somewhere short of the green, and he hit this beautiful shot onto the front left corner, which was, and I think when I walked up that fairway, I was about 15 yards ahead of him. I then got the whole atmosphere of what it is like to play in front of tens of thousands of people with grandstands all around enveloping the green, and every single person was cheering for Seve.
Like a football match, basically.
Yeah.
Every single person was cheering for me and Seve.
Yeah, no, every single person was cheering for Seve. And you get I think that was my one abiding memory, because I thought, this is just phenomenal.
Yeah.
Walked past my ball onto the green to sort of share the applause with him. In fact, it'd taken me 35 holes to realise that he got the applause to every green because he was first there. But I think the warmth, that was the thing about the Seve, the warmth of people's feeling towards him was phenomenal.
Yeah. So since we last spoke, we're on Masters now. The Masters is meant to be going ahead in November, okay? That's when it's scheduled to go. Will it go ahead?
Well, yeah, the powers that be want it to go ahead, so that's fantastic. If that's the case, absolutely fantastic. It'd be great if it goes ahead, because we'll be all starved of golf. Yeah. And I think whether they'll get the other majors played in the 2 previous months to that, I don't know. And the Ryder Cup, of course, that's another story. And the way the world is right now, we're not even at peak time in this country, let alone in all the other countries, certainly America. And America's having it pretty bad as well, isn't it? So I'd like to think that maybe they might get the Masters played. I can't imagine they're going to play any of the other majors, but who knows? This is April, whatever, 12th, is it? Yep. It's going to take a long time for this to filter through to back to anywhere what we thought was normal. And God forbid that we get back to some sort of semblance of normality, whatever that is going to be like. I don't know. Yeah. So I'd like to think it's going to be the case. I'm making plans to try and take a group over to the April Masters 2021 and go down to Hilton Head for a couple of days before it, which is one of the world's iconic places. So if you want to come with me, now's your chance.
I've already said yes. We've already said yes. But in all seriousness, guys, if you do want to check out Andrew's trips, I will leave a link down below to his website, because he does do some fantastic trips abroad, Portugal, Spain, all over the world, don't you? And as well as in the UK as well.
Yeah, I mean, we go to Turnberry and St Andrews, and two pretty special places. So we're. In fact, that's the first thing. Somebody asked me yesterday, "What's the first thing you're going to do when we come out of lockdown?" I said, "I'm going to get in my car and drive to Turnberry for about 3 or 4 days."
It's a shame you can't go and lock down up there and just imagine they open the golf course for you and just play.
No. Let's keep a lid on that stuff.
Yeah.
Let's just all get safe first.
Yeah.
So Seve's, he was an icon. The warmth. That's the thing. I think that the warmth he had and the love of the game. He just loved the game.
Game of golf.
He loved being loved as well. That was another thing.
We'll leave that one. Not quite for the show, I don't think.
no, but you know what I mean. He needed people to love him.
Yeah.
He needed that. He fed off that. That's exactly what he did.
So I know you mentioned before about golf clubs and the golf clubs that Seve used. Someone's asked here, do you think, and what do you think is the biggest difference between the clubs then and they are now? And is it the clubs that are making the most difference on the ability for these guys to be consistent, or have the players become more consistent in what they do?
I think the clubs, I mean, when you look at the clubs that Seve used, the irons are the same as the irons that they use virtually today. They're slightly less lofted generally than they are today. The golf ball spins a lot less and therefore goes a lot further. But the guys are athletes. They're out-and-out athletes. And the woods has made a big difference with the woods, I think, with the driver. Seve was a very long driver of the ball. So was Greg Norman. Even when they used wooden woods, Seve was amongst the longest hitters on the tour. He was every par five was in reach for him in those days with the softball and wooden woods. So he would have been fantastic with the new power metal woods that we know now. The latest drivers that are literally 3 times bigger than the old.
Yeah.
So the sweet spots, again, a bit of a thing about Seve was they made ordinary players a bit better.
Yeah.
And it negated his skill for being able to hit one of these Tony Panner drivers or a McGregor driver, whatever he used in those days, to get the ball off the middle of the sweet spot. If you didn't hit it off the middle of the sweet spot within a fingernail off the middle, then it was diving all over the place. It was horrible.
I think most people who obviously watch this channel now, they use modern equipment. They find it hard to believe that. I think, like, you mishit a modern day driver now, 9 times out of 10, or 7 times out of 10, you're probably still going to be okay. It's going to go relatively forward towards target.
Oh yeah, and not just that. The sweet spot is thumbprint size.
Yeah,
it's not little fingernail size, but it's also the 2 or 3 inches longer. So the power that they're creating, they've got lower center of gravity, so the ball kicks up in the air easier. They've got lighter shafts. They're tons easier to use. Full stop. I mean, it's like night and day. And so anyway, we digress a little bit. I think so. The woods made a big difference. The irons made no difference. I don't think. The wedges that Seve used are the same wedges that I use now, virtually. He just was a magician. The putters, there was no such thing as face balance putters. The first face balance putter that I ever saw was a zebra putter, which Raymond Floyd used in the Masters to win the Masters one year. But Seve, when he won, was using a straightforward ping answer, similar to the one that Tiger Woods uses now, although his is a Scotty. But so there wasn't that much difference, but they were all athletes. Now they're all super fit. They're all into the biomechanics. They all swing it mechanically a lot better than we all did.
Yeah.
I was okay, but I was not really okay.
Do you think that's because the technology's better now, though? Because you can actually see more the camera equipment.
Yeah, I think
that's going to have a big influence on it.
Yeah, I think video cameras have made a massive difference, and the ease of video cameras now, to be able to video on your phone, by your caddy can send it straight to your coach in the other side of the world, and he can give you some instant feedback. That never used to happen, and people are into biomechanics. Mark Bull, or Dr. Mark Bull, became, he's the leading expert in biomechanics. How does the body work into propelling something that way when we've got to turn this way and do this? And the understanding of mechanics, body mechanics, is massive, I think, now. And technique has become paramount, but with technique, you've got to have flexibility. With flexibility, you've got to have a bit of strength. You go down the whole route.
Yeah. Okay, so we're talking about Masters. We're going to finish on the last question here. What is your most favourite Masters moment of all time? Doesn't have to be Seve, this one. Jamie Oliver is asking and says, Alex, Andrew, greetings to you guys. Great content. What is your favourite Masters moment of all time?
Oof, that is very tough, isn't it? I've commentated at a number of Masters, about 8 or 10 Masters. I was there for Tiger's first Masters win in '97, that was, wasn't it? And my favourite Masters moment, I think, was Nick Faldo's long iron, 2-iron, I think it was. I think he changed from a 5-wood, if I'm not mistaken, to a 2-iron into the 13th. And it was off the 13th. If you've not been to Augusta, it's a real slope right to left, the fairway. So the ball was above his feet. The raised creek on the right and short of the green at the 13th. And it was just a phenomenal contact to hit the ball as sweet and clean as that, right into the middle of the green with all the pressure. If I'm not mistaken, I think that was the year that he came from 6 behind, 95 or thereabout. No, it can't be 95, whatever it was anyway, when he beat Greg Norman. And that was precision golf under the cosh with everything that could have gone wrong that didn't go wrong, and that was class.
I mean, I've heard a lot about Faldo being kind of like machine and repeat machine, and the stories about didn't he hit balls, his hands bled, and
Yeah.
what was
Well,
he
so.
like? I mean, I'm not going to say robotic because obviously he's will never count as a robotic golfer, but was he one of the golfers that was much more immersed in technique than anybody at the time?
Absolutely, 100%. Faldo was, and I talked to Ledbetter now at the Open Championship. He's part of the BBC team, and I've talked to him about Faldo a lot. And Nick Price needed one swing thought. All those other great players that David Ledbetter taught generally needed one swing thought. It might be, gripping it a bit firmer with the right hand or hooding it off the ball or whatever that swing thought was for that given time. And he said Faldo was yearning and yearning and yearning for more and more swing thoughts. He couldn't have enough swing thoughts. He wanted to know where his right arm was in the backswing and the downswing, and then what his left forearm was doing into the ball. So massive difference.
Yes.
Faldo was an absolute technician.
Yeah.
To the point of robotic. Yeah, he did become a bit of a robotic player, but that shot that he hit at that 13th was one of the best shots I've ever seen in my life.
I'm going to have to put that into YouTube. I'm sure we can all find that somewhere, can't we?
Yeah. Oh yeah. That is a real iconic shot. I mean, there's a few, aren't there? The Phil Mickelson one from the pine straw.
Yeah, that's the for me.
What a shot that was! I mean, that was to take it on.
Comes to my head is that one.
Is phenomenal. Seve hit one shot into the 15th as well that I remember, and I was probably your age, I'd say, when Seve was playing one of his early Masters. And he hit this big towering shot. And when you get there, the elevation change, it goes from up here to down there. And, it's a fantastic place to go and watch golf. The elevation changes and to catch the wind and all the rest of it. So to pull shots off under the cosh always impresses me, still does.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully, we can watch it tonight on the BBC, can't we? We can get under the cosh there, but you know what's going to happen now.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, that was some Masters though last year. Last year was some Masters.
I mean,
I did feel for Frankie Molinari.
Yeah,
because I think he, Woods did get a couple of breaks down 11 and 13 out the woods, but and Frankie clipping the pine needle or the pine cone on the edge of the tree at the 15th was horrible to see, but it made great viewing.
I put a post up on Instagram actually earlier about him celebrating the last with his arms up in the air, and I feel like I got goosebumps just because I was like that moment, and then that was almost that, and then we had the Tour Championships just prior to that as well.
Yeah,
where it comes like he's back after everything that's happened. He is back.
I know.
And I was getting goosebumps now talking about it because for me, he's like my golfing hero. Full stop.
Yeah, well, he's what my Seve was. He had that much influence over that many people, and Tiger, Seve, Pele. How many other people are known by Messi, maybe by one name in that transcends sport.
Cantona,
yeah. Eric the King.
Thanks very much for your time tonight, Joe. Really appreciate it.
Been really good. Enjoyed it. Anytime.
And guys, if you do want to know more about what Andrew does and his website, we will leave it down below. So be sure to check that out, as well as all the trips. Thank you guys for joining me tonight's show. I'll be back tomorrow at 7 p.m. So catch you then.